Something's not right here. I'm missing 2 doors. I'm missing the ride height so I can see over garbage trucks. And that's because I'm in one of the rarest forms of transportation today, a coupe. No, not an SUV coupe, a car with 2 doors. This is the Mercedes-Benz CLE 450. This starts at about $65,000, which surprisingly for this car is not bad at all. And when you add certain options, in minimal options, I'm talking about Burmester audio, massaging seats, the air purification system, which gets rid of the pollution on the outside, filters it out through a carbon filter and shows you on the screen the particulate level in the car. You can get this for about $72,000. So you're buying this probably because you don't need an SUV, you don't need a CUV, and you don't need 4 doors. You're maybe 1 or 2 persons. You're gonna appreciate what this does, because it's the outside style. It's classically designed. This is why people loved coupes, and coupes sold more. They have personality, longer front end. The proportions are not overstyled. Mercedes does this very well, and they're one of the very few companies that continues to do a coupe body style. The interior, you can do this tan, you can do like an off cream color, you can do a red, and when you sit in this, ignoring the tech for a minute, it's the Brightworks. It's the speaker grille design for the Burmester. It's the attention to detail on some of the trim pieces and the stitching. This feels very high quality. And they put the high quality where you see it, not so much below your knee level, but it's the dash inlays you can choose. There's not a bunch of piano black in here. It's the shiny high contrast pieces that look good. It all doesn't creak, it doesn't rattle, nothing's falling off. And this is a German-made car too. So if you're in the market for a German car and you want a German-made car that's not made in Mexico, that's this one. So there's this sense of solidness everywhere. It's the attention to detail and the vent work and some of the physicality of the switches and the controls, again, for this price point is great. Now, clearly you can make this very expensive, but this one is optioned out to about 75 grand. The seats are marginally comfortable. I would say they're not the most comfortable luxury seat, but the adjustability is great. Again, it's physical controls on the door, physical control on the headrest. You can kind of ratchet this out however you want it. The cup holder space is good in the door. There's an enormous center console and an armrest and still a glove box. So traditional stuff you're going to appreciate. They haven't turned this into that sports car interior you can't use. But the biggest negative here, and this is what happens when you commit to a technology for a brand, in cars at least, you have that supply chain for at least 5 years. So you have the tech that Mercedes doubled down on. So that means haptics and clickiness in the steering wheel controls where you have to swipe. It's all piano black too. So of course, everything in here is great, but there's fingerprints all over this. The 2 screens, while very high quality, this is the automotive equivalent of the Windows Vista era of design. Everything's full of gradients, despite it having some GPU acceleration. You know, it's smooth, the animations are smooth, but it's just littered full of graphical stuff that you don't need. The HVAC controls are all in the touchscreen, and it's one of these systems where you essentially have to get everything set in your profile. You're going to take a couple weeks of ownership to get it right, and you just don't mess with it again. Other than the HVAC controls being in here, that's kind of the deal breaker for me. But this is one of those, you have to sit in this car and see if you can deal with that part of it. But everything else about this interior space is really well done. I think they're almost there of trying to go back to a more traditional classic interior. The Burmester audio tests very well for this, for the price point. It's a little bit warmer, it has a little bit more bass, but again, the cabin is so solid that you appreciate the sound that's coming out of it. I'm gonna put the graphs up. Some of the tech works very well, and some of it is just a mixed bag, like I said, but we're gonna head into the shop and Jack's gonna tell you a little bit about the mechanical stuff.
In the shop with the 2024 Mercedes-Benz CLE. This is a new model line for Mercedes-Benz. This blends the old C-Class Coupe and E-Class Coupe. It's attempting to capture both vehicles while streamlining their product portfolio. It is longer and wider and lower to the ground than the outgoing C-Class and E-Class. This is not a sports coupe. This is more in line with something like a LC500 or a non-M440i 4 Series. It's a long-distance GT. While there are sporting pretensions to this vehicle, it's not a corner carver, it's a long-distance cruiser. This vehicle is on Mercedes-Benz second generation of the MRA platform. It is their rear-biased architecture that underpins everything from the C-Class to the S-Class. It, of course, allows for hybridization, One of the unique things about this architecture versus something like CLE in the 3 or 4 Series case is its multi-link front and rear. It is all aluminum in the front. It has a steel rear subframe, however. You get 2 different suspension options for this vehicle, comfort or sport. It's exactly what it sounds like. The comfort suspension is softer. The sport suspension, which is adaptive, has a little better body control, and it sacrifices some ride quality. When it comes to serviceability of this car, everything's covered up. I imagine it is not going to be cheap to repair, but the reality of 2-door luxury coupes or coupes is they're largely lease cars or something you buy with a warranty. Drivetrain. As of today, there are 2 drivetrain options, or 3 technically, for the CLE, at least here in the US. You have the CLE 300, which is a 4-cylinder. While it sounds like a 4-cylinder, it does not replace the smoothness of the outgoing V6. It's more fuel efficient, and to be fair to Mercedes, they do a really good job of isolating out their drivetrains. Being a member of the FAME engine family means they all have their 48-volt EQ boost setup. It's essentially a small electric motor that sits between the gearbox and the engine. It puts out less than 30 horsepower, but over 100 foot-pounds of torque. It is adding as a power generator along with running all the accessories. The one great benefit of the 48-volt system is due to the mandated stop-start of all the Euro cars, and I'm sure here in the US, stop-start functionality in this car is ultra smooth. In the CLE 450 that we have behind us, it makes a little less than 400 horsepower. They all put their power down through a 9-speed automatic from Mercedes. Because of the integrated starter generator motor, they've managed to improve some of the packaging. The compute power of the gearbox is faster than it used to be. It's honestly much improved. In the past, Mercedes automatics haven't been that good, and this is a nice step forward. So with that, Mark's going to take you for a quick drive on the street.
Let's take a drive in the Mercedes Coupe. I have the ultra aggressive fake engine noise on. Makes it sound like a V8. Let's do it. Not bad. I mean, it's more than enough power, and the thing that you start to lose a grip on in modern vehicles is the push towards these downsized engines. When you get into 4 cylinders and some of these 3 cylinders, there's nothing that replaces displacement in a vehicle like this. They spend so much money and effort on trying to refine the cabin. In the case of this Mercedes, I talked about it a little bit on the interior. It feels so solid, no harshness. There's all these things that are isolated out from the road, and then you have an engine that matches that character. That's kind of what I'm getting at, and you can't really replace it with a rattly ass 4-cylinder. So the main takeaways of driving this car are a fewfold. You're not buying the 450 or its a lower trim level because you want a sports car experience. And I think the one thing that this does really well is, and I hear this a big complaint, I don't want my SUV, I don't want my minivan, I don't want my car to feel like a sports car. I want it to be comfortable. I still want it to feel, somewhat sprightly, but without being rough and oversensitive to every input. And that's what this does great. From steering feel, it's still got a little bit of weight to it, but it takes just a little bit more effort to turn it. It's not razor sharp where the car's darting all over the place. And I think that's good for somebody that wants a more just laid back driving approach. You can still one-hand the wheel, but all the inputs are just softened a bit. The other thing is brake pedal feel. It's not an on and off switch. A lot of brake pedals, they are calibrated now. If you just breathe on them, it's like slamming your head forward. You really have a lot of play in the brake pedal before the brakes come on full force. So you can kind of get your foot in there and it slows down really easily. Again, all the inputs are slowed down and more comfortable, and that goes right down to the suspension setting. Like in your regular comfort setting, just the standard driving, it's super, super soft without being a boat. There's still good body control, but this, Mercedes has been really good historically on making sure that the cars ride soft and they still have good body control without being a total boat. but they're not so hard edge like some of the BMWs where it's like every impact is a knock, or some of the bad pavement types just transmit too much through, and this isolates all that out while still giving you, you know, if you want to turn quickly, it's got a lot of stability in it, the way that it's set up. It's not a car that's going to understeer up the road. It's not going to oversteer and do drifts or power slides either, unless you really do something stupid. So I think they knew their target customer wanted that leisurely driving experience. In terms of transmission, you know, this is not the quickest shifting thing ever, and it doesn't really need to be. It just needs to be quick enough to like get it to downshift on the highway to merge, and for 85% of people, I think it's more than enough power, and everything is really cohesively done. Programming from engine, transmission, suspension, steering, brakes, it's all really good. And if you want to be silly, you can turn on the fake engine noise like I have. It does sound like they're smaller displacement V8s, and it's just an enjoyable car to drive. I think I found myself enjoying this car way more than I thought I would. I thought it was just going to be a straight up go to bingo, like fall asleep driving it, and it's been surprisingly fun and ultra comfortable to drive it. And that's, you know, that's a big thing in a car like this when you're spending that kind of money on it. You want to make sure that you have, it does everything really well, and the CLE 450 does. All right, the conclusion. You're looking for a coupe, a real coupe. Mercedes-Benz does it great. The CLE 450, despite luxury cars gouging most people, the price point is very good. For around 70 grand, you're getting a lot, and you can option this out however you want. The main thing is it's a comfortable, relaxing car to drive. It's not overly sporty. While it's nimble, it doesn't take a lot of effort to drive it. It's not needlessly rough or bumpy. The transmission and engine performance are great. You still have a 6-cylinder here, which is, you know, getting more and more rare. And I would say the overall usability of the car is good for a 2-door vehicle. There's not a lot of trade-offs. You know, Jack talked about it in the shop. I talked about it in the interior. There's a lot to like about the way that they've implemented this. If this is something you're looking for, check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.